I would like to take you on a development adventure that I've been on for the last day and a half. Here was the problem I was trying to solve. I have this tool I'm making called Clips.marketing that lets you take a long form piece of content and split it up into a bunch of tiny clips. The reason for doing this is if you see an hour-long video, that's going to take commitment. If you're not part of the audience already, you might not want to be engaged in that. But if you see a little 30-second, 60-second clip pop up in Facebook or Twitter or Snapchat or whatever, you're probably going to watch that and then you'll be more engaged. It's an excellent lead magnet. Within each hour-long video, there's a dozen fantastic little clips that, if you go through the work of doing it, are fantastic ways to do marketing. So here's my tool for doing that. You upload the video here, and then it does a automatic transcription. The problem I was trying to solve was I want to be able to highlight these words and have these words then define the clip. And I want to also be able to change a word by like double clicking on it. So here I'm doing this. We're going to get into the weeds now of technical development and the things that I tried. Each one of these right now is its own React component, each one of these words. The reason for that is each word has like a start and stop time. It's very important that I have that information so that I can show the correct word at each time. And then if each of these is a record, I can just change it. I did this at first, storing each word as its own document in a Firestore database. It was a terrible idea. There's like 100,000 words in each podcast episode. The problem with doing it this way is because each of these are their own component, I can only render like 100 at once. And if I tried to render all 100,000, it was not working. So the next thing I tried was, is it a problem that it's a React component? What if it was just a span element and I started doing more old school development? So this is now frozen. Yep. So this is what happens. Yep. There we go. And it's scrolling way over here. There we go. And it takes a super long time to highlight. Like, this is not going to work. So the next thing I tried was, does it work if it's just text? Does it work if each word is not its own individual element, but if it's all just like words together? And like, yes, it does, of course, perfectly, because this is the web was designed to do, nice and responsive. I can highlight, I can do whatever I want. Problem is now I've lost the metadata. I'm not able to, when I've selected words, I'm not able to tell the metadata behind each word of when it starts and stops, and it's much more difficult to double click on a word and figure out what that particular word's ID is, where it's stored in the database, so that I can correct any mistakes. So the next thing I tried was, what if I, instead of rendering each word and thinking about things on the level of the word, what if I thought about it as lines? And that's not going to work, but that ended up leading me to the solution, which feels ridiculous in retrospect, but here is, oh, that's a error, and I know why that's happening. There we go, that's fixed. So you'll see buttery smooth scrolling over here, and I can double click on each line and say, I can correct this, and it corrects the word. How am I doing this? Well, with this ridiculous concept of infinite scrolling lines, or like virtualized lists. This is what the iPhone uses in rendering lists. The idea is, if you have a list of things, you could have a million things. You only really need to render the one chunk that you're actually looking at a time. So as you're scrolling through the list, you just have like a buffer on top that's a really tall buffer and a buffer on the bottom that's a really tall buffer. And as you scroll, you shrink the buffer on top and you expand the buffer on top, you shrink the buffer on the bottom, and then you keep removing items from the top and adding items to the bottom. And the idea is that like you don't need to render every single thing in the list. You just need to render things that you're actually seeing. So this is the library I used. They don't have any nice diagrams. That's okay. But you can see what's going on here because I haven't yet implemented highlighting. So you'll see if I highlight this and then scroll it off the page and then scroll back up, it's not highlighted anymore. I have a workaround for that, but what's functionally happening, the reason that's happening is I highlight it, it still exists. As soon as it gets scrolled off the page, that line disappears. And then when I bring it back in, it re-renders. And that's how I was able to solve that problem. A ridiculous problem with an equally ridiculous solution, but I think it's going to be a nice balance of everything I want to do with it. That's it. Have a good day.